is Airbnb panic? Let me get to the article. Okay. So this is put out by a gentleman named Nick Gurley, or Jurley. Maybe that's the better pronunciation. And he is from Reventure Consulting. I will go ahead and put this link in the comments for people, and I'll put in some of the others as we go. So off it goes. You guys can check this out yourself. But I will read through it. So deep dive. Why Airbnb owners are about to sell. Many Airbnb owners will soon be forced to sell their properties, resulting in a housing bust that could be on par with the 2008 subprime crisis in some cities. Many Airbnb owners will soon be forced to sell their property. Oh, said that already. These Airbnb owners are getting ready to sell because of Airbnb bust, a downturn in the short-term rental market that started in the second half of 2022. A downturn in the short-term rental market that started, you're right, with Airbnb operators in some cities facing a 50% decline in revenue. These declining revenues are the result of a slowdown in post-pandemic travel demand to go along with a massive increase in Airbnb supply, trends which are now causing many Airbnb operators to lose money on their rental. I believe these losses will cause a wave of distressed selling from Airbnb operators in 2023 and 24, particularly in cities where, one, revenue has crashed the most, makes sense, and number two, Airbnb supply increased the most. If you're a home buyer or real estate investor, it's important to understand the exposure your city and neighborhood has to the Airbnb crash, particularly the timing and depth of the downturn, because when it all shakes out, I believe there will be some great buying opportunities for home buyers and investors across the real estate spectrum. So without further ado, let's dive into the data. Note that when I refer to Airbnb in this article, I'm referring to the broader short-term rental market, which includes listings found on Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, and other travel sites. Okay, so what do you see? 65% more Airbnbs than homes for sale in 2023. But before getting into the city-specific data, it's important to understand the broader national trends. Most notably, the number of Airbnb rentals in America has skyrocketed from less than 200,000 7 years ago to nearly 1 million in 2023, according to data from All the Rooms. So that's one of these data sites that covers Airbnb and short-term rentals. At the same time, the number of homes listed for sale has plummeted, dropping from roughly 1.2 million prior to the pandemic to less than 600,000 a day, according to data from Realtor.com. The result is that there are currently 65% more homes listed for rent on Airbnb than listed for sale. All right. The rise in Airbnb rentals was caused by, one, investors buying up houses to rent out short-term, and two, existing homeowners deciding to list their houses on Airbnb instead of selling them. A double whammy, 1-2 punch that has sucked inventory out of the U.S. housing market. All right, so here we go to the cities. 50% crash in Airbnb revenue reported in some cities. But there are now signs that this trend of increased Airbnb listings might be coming to an end as the market reaches saturation in 2023, with Airbnb CEO warning of a booking slowdown. At the same time, vacation rental management companies reported a 13% drop in revenue per property in the first quarter of 2023. Clearly, something is up with the deluge of Airbnb supply over the last several years, now intersecting with a recessionary slowdown in travel demand, a cocktail which is leading to a collapse in revenue for Airbnb operators across America. The collapse is most notable in the Southwest and Mountain West areas of the country, where Airbnb revenue per listing is down 40 to 50% year over year, with owners in cities such as Austin, Phoenix, Denver, and San Antonio taking the hardest hit, according to data from All the Rooms. So you can look at this yourself, but yep, the top there is 52.9% drop, down to 39.2% drop, that being in Bakersfield, California. So you do not see Los Angeles in this. So that is some good news for us here. And then it talks about Phoenix. So Phoenix is ground zero for Airbnb bust. The epicenter of Airbnb bust is undoubtedly Phoenix, a market that is now plagued with a huge glut of short-term rental supply, with number of Airbnb rentals in Maricopa County increasing by 500% over the last 7 years. Much of that listing growth has come in the last 15 months as a downturn in the housing market pushed many owners to list their properties on Airbnb instead of selling them. The result was that Airbnb supply increased from 10,000 in the early 2022 to nearly 18,000 today. So that's a confusing graph, but you can check that out yourself. Well, we kind of get the gist of this.
Sure.
He goes on, the Airbnb sell-off will happen in urban neighborhoods and vacation destinations. So the oncoming Airbnb bust in America will be primarily felt in two types of locations. One, dense urban areas that have the most Airbnb inventory in big cities, and number two, vacation destinations. So let's see. Well, anyway, he makes Phoenix the example. Go ahead, man.
Like many articles, I mean, whenever you take a really strong position, you can just tell in their language that,
Yeah,
they're making some assumptions in there. And
yeah,
one thing he's not factoring in that's really obvious is that these Airbnbs can simply become long-term rentals, which there is a
right.
need for,
And that's what yeah, and he continues on to say that, yeah, that
Right.
the next step might be long-term rentals.
And the people that that lose in a market stabilization or a market shift are
Hmm.
those that step into the market with the expectation and or even in a worst case scenario the need for future growth. It's
Hmm.
required for it to be stable for them, for it to sustain, to get the best numbers possible on the rental side. To
Hmm.
they can't take a downturn. They can't deal with those tailwinds or the
Yeah.
headwinds, and they can't get to the other side of it. Will there be some foreclosures? Absolutely. If you bought an Airbnb in the last year, or if you bought a property, paid top dollar,
Uh-huh.
expected top return, had a higher interest rate, you factor in all those things, those people are going to have some struggles. They
Yeah.
are. Or you're right, maybe they'll sell, as the article says. That doesn't imply a bust. That puts a little bit of inventory back on the market, and
Sure.
that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
And then for long-term Airbnb owners, they're going to be all right.
Long term, who have owned it for a while? Well,
Yeah.
sure. Depends. With real estate, there's such a wide range. There's clearly, and I struggle with this periodically, but there's clearly those people who still think every property you own you should pay off, right? That's the
Right.
extreme. That's very old school. Um, then there's all the way at the other end of that are those who think you should suck out every dollar and leverage the most you can on every property. And in some cases, that the purpose of that is to go buy another property, have more resources to buy more properties. Those are the people that end up suffering with the slightest turn in the
Hmm.
market. Those who leverage to the max.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that can't deal with any shift. Um, and do they exist? They absolutely exist.
Yeah.
So it means there will be some stress sales. It doesn't mean it's going to change the market at all, considering where we're at with the current market conditions and low inventory.
Yep. So I just wanted to read this. So he does continue. Meanwhile, the number of vacant houses for rent has also skyrocketed in the same period, increasing from 43,000 houses available across America's 54 largest counties in March 2022 to nearly 80,000 in today, meaning that the number of vacant houses for rent has nearly doubled in the last year. So yeah, I guess it's already starting to happen. Um, cool. So cities where Airbnbs are performing better. So he names Washington, D.C., Milwaukee, and obviously we're here in LA. So yeah, this isn't happening across the board, but he's trying to decipher and see some reverberations, obviously, as you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and he cites travel as an issue. He also cites an oversupply as an issue. There's also, in each city, in each state, there are guidelines and restrictions that are put on Airbnbs that have been negotiated, partly because of the removal of supply, partly because the
Hmm.
hotel industry not wanting Airbnb to get strong.
Yeah.
So there's always a lot of factors that are involved in each city. Overall, the economy is pretty good in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I think There are definitely more Airbnbs available. More competition pulls down price a little bit. It's a nuanced market. It's very nuanced.
Hmm.
Those that are really good at it can be successful. But there are gaps, and you have to be able to deal with those gaps. And you have to have, like any other real estate purchase, you have to have a long-term perspective in mind, and you have to be in a position to keep it long-term. Most real estate has a successful end if you can deal with the ups and downs of current
Yeah.
market conditions.
Yeah. Well, and so he does try to end on a positive note, at least for some of us. So Airbnb bust creates opportunity for home buyers and investors.
Yeah.
Finally, I'd like to conclude with some perspective. I believe Airbnb bust is a positive trend that will help rebalance the real estate market and provide fresh opportunity to a new batch of home buyers and investors in 2023 and 24. So, all right. Well, we'll see if that happens. I'm not going to go into the other articles, but
Yeah.
basically, as with all numbers, right? We always say this. It's where is it sourced, how is it produced, and there's certainly some detractors telling everyone that this is not the case. Everybody agrees that it's a down. It's just not as much of this kind of down that he's talking about. So
Right.
we will see.
Right.
All
And
right.
those who seek a bust are well, look, the bottom line is Airbnb removes supply from the sales side. Airbnb removes supply from the long-term rental side, which is why a lot of
Hmm.
cities, like Los Angeles, which we're at, are not super happy about that because housing prices are high and rental prices are high, and that removes the competition, which keeps those prices up. And I don't think Airbnb has done enough to really tip the scales at price points. I don't.
Hmm.
Probably the bigger scale that's tipped is we just a combination of the slowdown in building after the 2007 crash, and
Hmm.
they really pulled back, stopped building. The increase in population in Los Angeles, and NIMBYism, just not wanting to build more and get denser. It's really been a collective of all of those components.
Yeah. Yeah.
Airbnb is one element.
Right. Yeah. It's never one thing. Yeah.